They said they'd sell her Starborn children. The human wanderer drew his blade instead. The sky above the desert outpost burned in streaks of violet and gold as the human wanderer approached. His cloak, tattered from months of travel, flapped against the dry wind like a flag of defiance. Rumors had carried him here, whispers of a cruel merchant clan that had captured an alien woman and her children, children with eyes that shimmered with starlight. Starborn, they called them. Legends said their lineage held power capable of bending the cosmos itself. But legends or not, the wanderer felt the weight of justice in his veins. He crouched behind a jagged dune and surveyed the compound. Torches flickered against the timbered walls, casting shadows that twisted like serpents. Inside, the merchant overlords haggled over the fate of the captives. Their laughter was harsh, metallic, echoing in the dry air. He could see her now, tall and lithe, with skin that glimmered faintly under the torchlight. Her arms clutched two tiny forms, her face pressed into their silken hair. Fear and defiance warred in her gaze, and it anchored the wanderer's resolve. He remembered the first time he had seen Starborn in the wild. A mother shielding her children from hunters who did not understand their kind. The universe was vast, but cruelty seemed universal. The wanderer's hand went to the hilt of his blade, worn but deadly, and he whispered a vow under his breath. No one will trade their lives for coin while I stand. A loud clatter signaled the merchant's arrival at the holding cell. The woman straightened, eyes flashing as she measured the room for a chance to escape. Her children stirred, sensing her tension. The wanderer's pulse quickened. He could not afford hesitation. The first guard approached, baton raised. The wanderer emerged from the shadows, blade gleaming under the dying light. The guard froze, surprise flashing in his eyes, but before he could shout, the blade sang through the air. It met metal, clashing and sparking. Two more guards joined, and he danced through their strikes with precise, lethal grace, each swing cutting a swath of silence through the chaos. Inside the holding cell, the woman watched in disbelief. Who are you?" she whispered, voice trembling. "Someone who doesn't let children become currency," he replied, sliding the last guard aside and stepping forward. She hesitated. Her hand hovered over the latch, but the wanderer shook his head. "Not yet. They'll notice if you run now. Trust me for a heartbeat longer." Together, they moved through the compound like shadows of justice. Torches flared as more merchants realized what was happening. Screams split the night, but the wanderer's blade was a whisper of inevitability, cutting paths, opening doors, leaving fear and broken locks behind. He guided her through corridors she had memorized but had never traversed so quickly. Finally they reached the central chamber. A merchant, tall and cruel, stood over a table where documents promised the Starborn children to the highest bidder. His face twisted into a sneer. "You think you can steal from me, human? These children are mine." The wanderer's eyes narrowed. "They are not for sale. Not ever." The merchant lunged, blade drawn. The wanderer met him with a fury he had never known he possessed, steel clashing against steel in a storm of sparks. Every strike carried his anger, his pain, and his unyielding belief that life was not a commodity. Within moments, the merchant lay disarmed and gasping, the threat extinguished. The woman's children peeked from behind her, eyes glowing faintly like tiny stars. She knelt, scooping them into her arms. "Thank you," she breathed, her voice catching. "I didn't believe anyone would come." The wanderer looked to the horizon, the first hint of dawn touching the desert sky. "Some of us still remember," he said simply. "And we fight." They emerged from the compound together, the children's tiny hands entwined with their mother's fingers. The wind swept over them, carrying away the last echoes of cruelty. The woman turned to him, eyes glistening. "Who are you, really?" He merely shook his head. "No one you need to know. Just a human who drew his blade when it mattered." The desert stretched endlessly ahead, a harsh and unforgiving world, yet now it seemed softer, almost alive with hope. The woman and her children vanished into the rising light, and the wanderer stayed on the dunes, watching them go, feeling the satisfaction of a justice wrought not by words, but by steel and courage. For the first time in many nights, he allowed himself a rare smile. Somewhere in the universe life had prevailed, and he had been the hand to protect it. The stars overhead blinked knowingly, as if acknowledging the silent oath of a wanderer who had stood against darkness, and won. And as the sun crested over the horizon, the human wanderer disappeared back into the endless desert, leaving only whispers of legend in his wake. The central chamber reeked of fear and smoke as the last merchant guard fell, groaning and clutching his side. The tall, cruel merchant who had orchestrated the sale of the Starborn children glared at the wanderer, blade in hand, lips curling into a sneer. "You think you can stop me?" he hissed. The wanderer met his gaze, eyes cold steel. "They're not yours. Not now. Not ever." With a roar, the merchant lunged. Steel clashed, sparks flying into the torchlight. Each strike of the wanderer's blade was precise, carrying every ounce of his fury and resolve. In moments, the merchant was disarmed, sprawled on the floor, his sneer replaced by shock and fear. The woman, clutching her two glowing Starborn children, stepped forward. Tears streaked her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "I didn't think anyone would come for us." The wanderer gave her a small nod. "Some of us still fight when it matters." Outside, the first light of dawn brushed the desert, turning the sands gold. The woman gathered her children, their faintly shimmering eyes reflecting the sunrise. They moved away from the compound, leaving behind the shadows of cruelty. The wanderer watched silently, the wind tugging at his cloak, carrying with it the quiet satisfaction of justice served. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Just someone who drew his blade," he replied softly, stepping back into the dunes. As the sun climbed higher, he melted into the horizon, leaving only whispers of legend behind. A human who had stood against darkness to protect life, a reminder that courage could shine even in the harshest deserts. And somewhere, far above, the stars blinked, acknowledging the silent vow of the wanderer who had dared to fight for what was right.